Adolf Hitler, the Master Manipulator, by Hilary Rowell, Lindsay Miles, and Aaron Holcomb.
One of the most gifted and influential political orators the world has ever known rose to power while afflicted with major mental and emotional defects. This man, Adolf Hitler, was able to inspire an entire nation to work in concert with his diabolical schemes, all the while inner demons and abnormal psychology shaped his policies and decisions. Hitler's reign of terror is well documented in history, but it remains perplexing that a man of such humble origin, limited education, and extreme ideals could rise to power and orchestrate nationwide collaboration to pursue his twisted agenda. The actions and directives of Adolf Hitler resulted in untold suffering, a staggering death toll estimated by some historians as high as 40 million, and a permanent alteration in the course of world history and the lives of millions of individuals.
The horrific nature of the atrocities committed under Hitler's regime and the radical ideas encompassed in his ideology are incredulous to those who examine his rise and fall. What motivated this man to act as he did or to enable him to gain the confidence and support of millions of German citizens?
What special qualities did Hitler possess that allowed him to manipulate human beings in similar fashion to a puppet master maneuvering his marionettes? Perhaps a look at his upbringing, behavior, and his own words, along with professional psychological evaluations by Allied agencies, can shed light on the enigma of Adolf Hitler, the master of manipulation.
Born in Austria in 1889, Hitler and his family relocated to Germany when he was 3 years old. As a child, he was described as moody and lazy with an unstable temperament. After the death of his younger brother in 1900, Hitler became introverted and detached. He was intelligent and did well in school during the early years, but his grades suffered when he was forced by his father to attend technical school rather than a classic school where he hoped to develop his artistic talent. His father would not entertain that notion as he intended for his son to follow in his footsteps as a civil servant. Hitler dropped out of school at the age of 16 following his father's death. He revealed to others that the poor grades he made were an attempt to convince his father to let him follow his heart. During his youth, Hitler was an avid reader who had a fascination with books on war and enjoyed playing war games with younger children.
It appears that Hitler's emotional and psychological instability can be linked to his childhood. According to Dr. Henry Murray, a Harvard professor and psychologist who was commissioned in 1943 by the United States Office of Strategic Services to study Hitler's personality and make behavioral predictions, he submitted a 229-page report to the department and diagnosed Hitler as a schizophrenic on a mission to avenge his childhood years of repressed rage. He described him as a paranoid and incapable of normal human relationships. The doctor felt it would be impossible to expect Hitler to show mercy or humane treatment to others.
Dr. Murray revealed that Hitler's abusive childhood left him frustrated with a need to exert dominance in all things. Hitler was subservient and respectful to his father, but viewed him as the enemy who ruled with tyrannical severity and injustice. Hitler proclaimed respect for his father and love only for his mother. The report also divulged that Hitler suffered from intolerable feelings of inferiority due largely to his small, frail, and sickly physical appearance. He compensated for his own inferiority by revering brute strength, physical force, ruthless domination, and military conquest. Sexually, he was described as a full-fledged masochist who humiliated and abused partners because he was unable to consummate relationships. His problems caused him to have exorbitant cravings for superiority that could only be appeased by unsurpassed power in the world at large.
Hitler transitioned from child to young adult with an intense German nationalism. This played a major role in his ideology. He fervently desired to transform Europe into Greater Germany while excluding non-Aryan and biologically imperfect humans from his utopia. Hitler's morals were as warped as his ideologies, and he had no compunction about imprisoning, enslaving, or exterminating those that did not meet his criteria.
He traveled to Vienna, Austria to apply to the Viennese Academy of Fine Arts, but failed to pass the entrance requirements twice. Hitler remained in Vienna for several years, living a drifter lifestyle. He was also rejected by the Austrian army for entrance because he was deemed permanently physically unfit for conscription.
Hitler was accepted into the German army at the onset of World War I. He served as a soldier and became a decorated war veteran, receiving 2 medals for bravery. It is in this time period that he claims to have developed his awareness regarding propaganda as an important component for political and military success.
Hitler became politically active following his military enlistment and grew convinced of the rightness of his doctrine, his entitlement to power, and the absolute necessity of propaganda to indoctrinate the masses and conform their beliefs to his own. His early political career began with the National Socialist German Workers' Party.
As a shrewd analyst of human nature, Hitler intuitively knew how to captivate his audiences. His ability to mesmerize listeners with impassioned speeches was recognized by party leaders, and a meteoric rise to leadership followed. He was not considered an impressive or charismatic individual in social settings. According to Murray's psychological report, he was known to offer weak handshakes with moist and clammy palms and was awkward at making small talk. He also appeared shy or moody when meeting people and was uncoordinated in his gestures. His overall presence was described as hypnotic, although his eyes appeared dead, impersonal, and unseeing. With the persona he assumed during speeches, he became larger than life, full of emotion, and was able to amass an almost cult-like following. Hitler had what was termed an awestruck effect on his audiences, and his persuasive impact came from his ability to express passion. He would pour out his heart, and those emotions would elicit the same response from his followers. They would then stop thinking critically.
In 1923, Hitler headed a political coup that was unsuccessful. He received a 5-year prison sentence, and during his confinement in Landorf jail, wrote the first volume of Mein Kampf, an autobiography revealing his dogma and plans for Germany's future. Several chapters outlined his concepts on propaganda. Hitler was released after serving less than 1 year of his sentence and resumed political activity. He and the Nazi Party capitalized on Germany's economic problems and discontent and won leadership of the country's government in 1933. Propaganda had been used on a smaller scale during Hitler's political climb, as he had limited access to media outlets and means. Once he was elected chancellor in 1933, free access to mass media and unlimited resources ignited an all-out propaganda blitz.
One of the first steps under Hitler's authority was creation of the Reich Ministry of Public Enlightenment and Propaganda to disseminate Nazi propaganda. The efforts were very organized, well-planned, and hugely successful.
His regime was able to garner unprecedented cooperation among the people, or at minimum gain their acquiescence to inhumane Nazi atrocities against so-called enemies of the German state. Citizens were willing to make supreme sacrifices for the Nazi cause and often gave their enthusiastic and frenzied support.
Hitler amassed an almost cult-like following through the persona he created and projected in the propaganda campaigns. Considering his inauspicious beginnings and social inadequacy, it does not seem possible that Hitler could secure such a stronghold on an entire nation.
He believed that violence was a compulsory element to achieve his goals and used it ruthlessly to eradicate adversaries and state enemies and to subdue those that did not ascribe to his ideology.
In Mein Kampf, Hitler wrote that a common enemy was essential for effective propaganda to consolidate and motivate the masses. He adhered to this philosophy and identified enemies of the German people who also happened to be the objects of his personal prejudices. Hitler's plan was to rid the nation and eventually the world of Jews, communists, gypsies, handicapped, and mentally ill persons. This plan was called the Final Solution. Sterilizations were also performed on approximately 200,000 individuals determined by his officials to be genetically unsuitable for procreation. The economic burden of caring for the disabled was a Nazi selling point.
Psychological profiling of the Fuhrer was done by British intelligence in 1942, and they found he had a messiah complex, and believed he alone could lead this crusade against Jews and enemies of the state. They theorized that he was caught in a web of religious delusions, that Jews were an incarnation of evil, and he was the spirit of good who must sacrifice for victory over evil.
The meticulous planning that went into every aspect of Nazi propaganda assured it would be easily understood and so repetitive that the messages would be internalized by the masses. Each possible avenue to infiltrate the minds and opinions of German citizens were carefully designed and engineered. Curriculums and resources were created to indoctrinate the public at large and also to train those responsible for distributing the information. No detail was left to chance.
Propaganda to influence thought processes was distributed to every conceivable format. It was intended to incite emotion and alter sensibilities. The sounds and images were broadcasted on radio, in films, books for adults and children, newspapers, magazines, comic books and textbooks, fine art, posters, photographs, and even toys and trading cards. Any opportunity to indoctrinate was fair game.
youth groups were established to begin indoctrination as early as possible. Boys entered the Hitler Youth and girls joined the German Girls' League. Girls learned skills to prepare them for the role Hitler perceived as the most noble and important thing that a woman could have, a wife and mother. Physical activities to enhance their health and reproductive capabilities were promoted.
Aryan proliferation was so important to Hitler that awards were given to women who reached birth quotas and financial compensations were also given. Propaganda meant to induce women to have more children was abundant. Every effort was made under Hitler's government to promote pregnancy. Even single women were encouraged to contribute offspring by removing the social stigma of unwed mothers with legislation that allowed single mothers to legally be called Mrs. instead of Miss. In 1936, when members of the Hitler Youth and the Girls' League attended the Nuremberg Rally, 900 girls between the ages of 15 and 18 returned home pregnant, and this was considered satisfactory. Propaganda added a sensual undertone to encourage sexual activity. Even infidelity was not discouraged among Hitler's chosen race as it was a means to populate. The Nazi propaganda campaign contributed significantly to help Hitler and the Nazi Party accomplish domination in Germany. During his quest to extend the German Empire, Hitler overextended his military personnel and capabilities with aggression on multiple fronts. He has also wrongly assumed that prior isolationism by Great Britain and the United States would continue. Ultimately, his mistakes led to military defeat, and as Allied forces grew closer, Hitler opted to end his life by suicide.
So many factors were necessary for history to unfold as it did. First, Germans were ripe with discontent. Hitler's superior aptitude for oration, in addition to his life circumstances that had developed his particular psychological pathology, were crucial elements. Intellect and innate ability to analyze, design, and implement strategies to climb German political ranks, commandeer the government, and manipulate millions was also essential. What if Hitler had realized his dream as an artist? Think of the implications. His evil deeds did serve an important function in my life, however. The world without the Fuhrer would have also been a world without me, Hilary Rowell. Had he not provoked World War II, my German maternal grandmother, Ingrid Dannenmann, of Frankfurt, Germany, and my American maternal grandfather, Richard Hicks, would not have met. It was during Granddad's military assignment as a GI in Frankfurt to support the United States post-war military occupation that love blossomed and our family tree grew. In a strange sense, my life was also orchestrated by Adolf Hitler.